First things first, your new hardware is a multi-touch interactive display. This means that the screen and many of the tools work the same way that a tablet or a smartphone would. You can pinch and zoom, drag and drop, and best of all, multiple students can work simultaneously. This is a little different from a projector-based system that you might have used before, or a system that required a special pen for interaction. But trust me, you're going to love this. With your new hardware, you have the ability to interact using a stylus, your fingers, or your palm. For example, I can write or take notes with my finger or the stylus, depending on what's comfortable for you. I can use the back of the stylus to erase if I want to do fine erasing, or my palm to do larger erasing. I can also use my finger to drag and drop and manipulate items on the screen. The panel intuitively knows the difference between pen and touch, but these are some settings you can change if you'd like. Access your locker, choose the settings cogwheel, and then toggle off either palm mode or second pen mode. Toggling off palm mode takes away the ability to palm erase, and toggling off second pen mode takes away the ability to use the front of the pen as the writing tool and the back as an eraser. And what if you want to plug in your teacher computer? No problem. This display will turn your teacher computer into a multi-touch display as well. And if you don't want to plug it in, maybe it's a little slow, the panel actually has its own built-in system that you can teach directly from. At the center of the panel, you'll find the controls. From left to right, you have the power button, which we'll cover in more detail in just a second, but for now, on and off. Volume controls, the Promethean flame button, which accesses the unified menu, the freeze screen button, which freezes the image or content on the screen, freeze touch button, which disables all touch functions, and note that you can use the freeze touch and freeze screen simultaneously, and the source button, which allows you to switch between sources connected to your ActivPanel. On your ActivPanel, you'll notice two little sensors in the right and left-hand corner. These are proximity sensors that are unique to the titanium model. These sensors work to recognize motion in the classroom. That way, when you walk in, the panel will do a soft startup, and when you're ready to teach, all you have to do is either tap the screen or hit the flame button, and bam, you're ready to rock and roll. No more wasting instructional time waiting for hardware to boot up. I love this feature. You'll also notice a little tray at the bottom of your panel. This is just a little convenient place to hold your panel stylus. Let's go back to the power button and dive a little deeper here. When the power button is red and the flame is off, the panel is not booted up. When the power button is white and the flame is off, the panel is booting up. When the power button is red and the flame is white, the panel is sleeping. And when the power button is white and the flame is white, the panel is active. Touch and hold the power to power the panel all the way down. When you see the red power button and the flame off, that's your sign that your panel is powered all the way down. In addition to the controls on the front of the panel, you also have a remote. Starting at the top, you have the power button. Down the center of the remote, you have your go-to controls like menu, source, blank screen, and freeze screen. You also have volume controls and the ability to toggle should you need. To the left of the panel, you'll see some ports. Those are 2 USB ports, an HDMI port, and a USB touch port. And there you have it, a quick tour of your ActivPanel titanium hardware. First things first, your new hardware is a multi-touch interactive display. This means you can manipulate the screen and many of the tools just like you would a smartphone or a tablet. You can pinch and zoom in and out, drag and drop, and best of all, multiple students can work simultaneously. You can interact using either the stylus or your fingers. This is a little different if you're used to using a projector-based system or a system that required a special pen, but I promise you, you are going to love it. And what if you want to plug your teacher computer into the ActivPanel? No problem. This display will turn your teacher computer into a multi-touch display as well. And if you don't want to plug your teacher computer in, maybe it's a little slow, no problem. The ActivPanel has its own built-in system that you can use and teach directly from. Let's review the front console of the nickel panel. To the right, you'll find the controls. From left to right, you have the power button, the Promethean flame button, which accesses the unified menu, the volume controls, and source button, which allows you to switch between sources connected to your ActivPanel. Below the controls, you'll also notice a tray for conveniently holding your stylus. In addition to the controls on the front of the panel, you also have a remote. Starting at the top, you have the power button. Down the center of the remote, you have your go-to controls like menu, source, blank screen, and freeze screen. You also have volume controls and the ability to toggle should you need. To the left of the panel, you'll see some ports. From left to right, you have one USB OPS port, one USB port, an HDMI port, and a USB touch port. And there you have it, a quick tour of your new ActivPanel nickel hardware. We've got you prepped, so let's start with actually using your ActivPanel. The best place to start is by learning about the powerful unified menu built directly into your panel. The best thing about the unified menu is that it's accessible at all times, regardless of if you're using a teacher computer, a bundled Promethean computer, a document camera, or just the panel itself. The menu is always there and you have access to all of its tools. You can access the unified menu in a couple of different ways. One of those is to press the Promethean flame button, or you can use one of the three arrows on the bottom or the sides of the panel, making the unified menu virtually accessible anywhere you are on the panel. The unified menu is a quick shortcut to many of the tools, settings, and apps that make the panel so powerful. From left to right, you can see that you have a back button, your locker app, which houses all of your apps, files, and a couple of shortcut settings. Then you have your owner or profile, depending on what profile you're signed into. From here, you can sign in and out, adjust some of the settings, and access your cloud storage that we'll discuss later. From there, you have a home button that will take you back to your home screen, the whiteboard capture and annotate shortcut buttons, the source app, which allows you to easily toggle between other devices that you have plugged into the panel, the screen share app, which will allow you to mirror, and we'll discuss that as well. And then finally, your recent apps toggle button. From here, you can toggle between different apps or use that feature to close out any open apps you have running. In the event that you would like to hide or disable the unified menu, you can absolutely do that. To do that, you'll access your panel's locker, choose the Settings app, choose Display, and then toggle off the unified menu. From here, you'll notice the unified menu no longer shows in any of the corners, but you need to get access to some of your tools and settings still. So if you hit the flame button, your locker will appear and you can move through and access those different applications and settings. In the event that you would like to turn the unified menu back on, to use some of those shortcuts like you did prior, you can absolutely do so by just repeating those steps, and instead of turning it off, enable it and turn it on. The unified menu helps the ActivPanel fit into any teaching environment because you always have access to your apps and settings. Before we cover all the powerful tools the ActivPanel has to offer, we need to take a deep dive into one of those, the Promethean Whiteboard App. Much like ActivInspire, this app allows you to recapture your teaching space with a multi-touch whiteboard. So let's take a look. To access the whiteboard, go into your unified menu and choose the Whiteboard app. Once the canvas opens, you'll notice a toolbar on the side. Many of these tools you could probably figure out without my help, but for the sake of us all being on the same page, we're going to go through many of them together. First things first, we'll start with how do you even write or highlight. You'll notice a pen and highlighter icon. You can use both of those and click to change the thickness or width to the one you desire to write with. So if I'm taking notes and I decide that that's too thin, I can click in, change the thickness, and then I'm ready to roll. Same thing with the highlighter, as well as selecting and changing different colors. If you don't see the colors you like here, you can choose the palette and it will open up more options for you. You also have the ability to erase. I can make small erases by choosing the eraser tool, or if I want to erase all my annotations, I can choose Erase All. In the event that I decided that I accidentally erased everything, that would be a good time to utilize your undo and redo options. One of my favorite features of the whiteboard is that it is an infinite canvas. So if I've run out of room when taking notes, I can simply scroll up or side to side or down to give me more space to complete my notes or whatever I'm teaching to my students. You can also notice that in the corner, it gives me a little preview of where I am as I move that infinite canvas around. Another fan favorite is the student split screen. This gives you the ability to split the canvas into 2 separate workspaces so students have their own tools and they're not fighting over what color to use or what math tool they're going to use. So for example, if I'm teaching a lesson on angles and I want students to come up and show an example of an acute, an obtuse, or a right angle, they can each have their own math tools and they can each come in and make their own angles. When I'm ready to close this feature out, I simply click the split screen again and I'm back into my regular canvas and that work stays. Now I can come up and teach and manipulate those things. Math tools are also available in the single canvas, not just in the student split screen canvas. You can access those towards the bottom of the toolbar, and they're easy to move around, and you can pinch and zoom to manipulate them to the size that you would need. These are a great way to make nice, quick, straight lines, shapes, or whatever you're using them for within your lesson. Up next, let's talk about the background feature. I love this to help me and my students make sure that we're writing in a straight line, especially when it comes to trying to solve or simplify an equation. You can even zoom in those backgrounds to make the lines a little bit bigger. So if I'm having my students simplify an equation, they can now keep all their work in a nice straight line. You also have the ability within backgrounds to change the line color. So if that light blue was too light, you can change that. Or if you want your background to be like a chalkboard, you can change the background to black and then the lines to that lighter color. So all of those are your preference, and there's several other background templates to choose from. Speaking of templates, not only can you change the background, and I'm gonna set ours back to a plain canvas and erase all, but you can also insert templates and images from your gallery. So there's some preset ones in here that come with your panel. So if I'm teaching a lesson on the Civil War and I want to compare the Union to the Confederacy, while we're on the topic of Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation, I can pull those supporting images and that chart in and use them to easily teach my lesson. So it took 0 prep time. I just grabbed them from the gallery and the charts and templates, and I'm ready to roll. Remember that this is multi-touch, so as you saw 2 students working in their own place, you can also have multiple students up here working at one time just in the single canvas. Once you've got all your notes and you're done with your lesson, you might want to save them or export them so that you can upload them for students or email them to a co-teacher or something of that nature. To do that, you can choose the 3 dots or the traffic light that we refer to it as sometimes, and you'll find all of your saving and exporting options. Just a quick note, you see 3 exporting options. Export as PWB means Promethean Whiteboard. That's just the file type it will save as. Keep in mind that when you save something like a PWB to your Google Drive, it will require the ActivPanel to open that file type. So if you save it as a PWB, it probably won't open for a parent on their smartphone or their computer. What you'll want to do is choose to export it as a PDF screenshot or Canvas. A screenshot means it will only save what you see right here on the screen. The Canvas means that it will take a screenshot of everything that is included in there. So if you've moved that infinite canvas around and taken more notes than what's visible on the screen, that's the option that you're going to want to choose. Now, if you're just saving it for the purposes of you reopening it another day, then you're fine to choose Save, Save As, or Export as a PWB. You'll also notice in that menu a few other features that you can use. You can open a new Promethean Whiteboard. You can open files to import into the whiteboard. You can change your toolbar position from this side of the screen to the other side. So if you naturally teach from that side, that's a great idea to move it so you're not getting you a little workout moving back and forth to select your tools. And then lastly, you can use the close feature to close out of the whiteboard and bring you back to your home screen of your panel.